Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined today by Quinny and Kev Graham. There is a lot to discuss around Flag Day, but before we get stuck into that, gentlemen, the Champions League qualifiers have been drawn. We have been drawn against Slovan Bratislava or Kairat. Now, the first leg is going to be at home. What do you think of the draw? I'm going to start with you, Quinny.
I think it's pretty much as good as you would want, very known quantity in terms of Bratislava. And the other team, if they were to get by them, I think we've got a good draw, certainly. There was one or two banana skins that could have been there, would have been a bit tougher. But yeah, I'm buzzing with it.
Right, so you're happy. As you say, there is the, sometimes the fear of the unknown, Quinny. Slovan Bratislava, we know all about them, and I'm pretty sure that we'll be studying the performances from last season's campaign, not just when we played them, but everybody else. And when you look at Kairat, it looks like we could be going to Kazakhstan if that happens. Kev, I know you've travelled all over the world watching Celtic. Have you been to Slovakia or Kazakhstan?
No, I haven't, no. As Quinny says, it could have been worse. But I think if any two teams watched us yesterday, they'll actually feel that they've got a decent chance against us. So we've got 3 weeks to get it sorted, basically, because yesterday, if we continue, I think yesterday was a continuation of what we looked like towards the end of last season. If that actually continues, then we're looking at the Europa League. Doesn't matter who we face.
Well, there is always that feeling, Kev, that we're trying to scrape our way through these qualifiers, and we've spoken about it on this show, and not for the first time in the 8 years that Acsom has been on air, if you like. So that's always a concern, and I don't think it's anything to do with paranoia or negativity. I think that when you look at it and you look at the state of play with Brendan Rodgers, these press conferences, he's sharing a lot of these frustrations. But going into the game, going into Flag Day, Quinny, I'm going to start off by saying, what were we up to? Well, you got the usual Acsom contributors up at the park, those who are Glasgow/Scottish based actually at the game. You then had Barras Art and Design, the fan zone down at the Barras Art and Design, and I was joined there for a pre-match sherbet with your good self, Quinny. You met up with Steve-O from Celtic World Order. Big shout out to the big fella who was sporting the Acsom merchandise, incidentally, which was looking great. And then, obviously, I'm on the stage there with an Acsom contributor, and we've also got Acsom up at the park for the post-match presser. So busy day all round. But let's talk about some of the figures before the ball's kicked. Right, let's talk about some of the figures. I'm going to start off with the Maestro. There's a buzz about the place because the Maestro was back, and I'm looking at, the images of him all over social media. I watched the pre-match interview this morning with him in the dugout with Peter Grant, his old teammate, and Granty tells quite a few stories about Paul McStay when they were growing up as young Celtic fans and players back in the 1980s. Great to see him back, Quinny, but every time this happens, I think it's been 6 years since he's been back at Celtic Park, I always say, why isn't there a role for this man out in Australia? Surely he could be doing some kind of ambassadorial stroke scouting work out there for us. He's a big data guy, Paul McStay, big data guy.
Yeah, I've heard you say before he's got his own scouting company or something like that. So it does feel like an opportunity missed. And, there's always a kind of joke on here that Celtic kind of, take the tips and the hints from Acsom and make them their own in many ways. And when I seen that he was announced to be the guy for Flag Day, I thought, I wonder if they've been listening to all the Paul John chat around Paul McStay and getting hooked up with him. So you never know. Maybe it's the beginning of a new relationship.
I hope it is. And like you say, we were chatting, and we do chat about McStay quite a bit. And the one picture I've got saved on the images in here is one that I was going to share again, but I might have deleted it. No, it's not. It's just to prove that his wife has got the best handwriting I've ever seen. There you go. Anne-Marie McStay wrote to me when Paul was in San Marino, sent me loads of goodies, all signed, and they're in a folder over there. And one of these days, I'm going to rifle through that folder, some amount of stuff. Kev, Paul McStay, the Maestro, he was talking about Callum McGregor, said that in many respects he reminds him of himself. That's an accolade and a half. That's a testimonial, isn't it?
That is for one of the... You could have the argument that apart from between him and Kieran Tierney, they're the two last world-class players that our youth system has actually produced, maybe.
Good shout. It's a good discussion, that actually.
And that's an argument for you. Aye, so for him to say that and Callum McGregor, then that's absolutely big kudos for Callum McGregor, ain't it? And again, Callum was his normal self yesterday. I thought he had maybe dragged us out the mire, but then a strange rule, which is the rule, whether we agree with it or not, chopped the goal rightly off. Aye, that's a big accolade for Callum, and he can actually take that. That can go beside all his trophies, actually.
I'd have that.
He should get that coat.
Full wall vinyl, yes.
Stenciled on his wall, in his living room wall.
Get the Celtic wall canvas guys in. Get wee John in to do that for you. But, I mean, Paul McStay, brilliant to see him back. It's all part of the big celebration and the vibe outside the park with the tunes blaring and all that. Again, no looking for criticisms. Why don't you do it at every home game? I'm not saying Paul McStay, but let's get the tunes, let's get the fan zone up at Celtic Park. The other figure I want to talk about, and who knows if he was invited by the Celtic board, but he jumped on a train and went to the game with his missus anyway, and it was the one, the only, the bonnet, Fergus McCowan. Brilliant to see Fergus McCowan coming to a flag day and not getting booed. I think that's tremendous. But also, the big thing for me is it's one of the ones, we might look back on that, Quinny, and say, that's quite a pivotal moment. There's Fergus coming back to bash a few heads together, because I'll tell you something, if anybody could put a wee bit more of a decisive nature into that boardroom, it would be wee Fergus.
Is that to me or Quinny?
It was to Quinny, but I don't know if Quinny's just sitting there
Quinny
going, I agree with you, man. Move on, let's go.
It was great to see him there. It was funny because the first time I've seen him since being a wee boy, and he's still the same, isn't he? But he's also a lot more frail.
That's a great point.
That's a great
point. He was always old. Even when he was 30 and 40, he just looked like an old man. Sorry, Fergus.
Yeah.
We love you, Fergus. We love you.
No, it's like all of us that grew up in the 80s, and now you think of the guys that were my age in the 80s as you were growing up, or even younger, like were 38, 39. You see that Scottish footballers in the 80s, when they were 31, they looked like they were 50 odds, And Fergus always just looked like one of the wee guys. I bet he looked like that when he was 21. Probably looked like that when he was 16, kicking about Kilsyth, dressed in a suit and a bonnet and like
Croy Secretary of the CSC. You imagine that? Aye. That'd be an interesting photograph. I'm sure it's out there somewhere on the phone, sorting out the bank account. No, but the thing with Fergus is he's there, he's in the stadium. It's interesting because there's always a lot of talk around the Celtic board. I remember someone last season saying that Celtic fans talk about the board more than any other football club in Europe. You're probably right. We probably do. I wonder what wee Fergus thinks about coming back to Celtic Park. Another one, of course, massive kudos to the Green Brigade, to North Curve, tifos, absolutely outstanding, paying tribute to John Fallon and John Clark. Quinny, beautiful to see.
I was at the game myself. I was in one of the displays. I don't know which one, but I had my black bag up in the air for it. So, great to see. Because as well, there was some chat pre-match about like some tension between the club and the Green Brigade and the displays and all that stuff. And they're talking about match suspensions and all that caper. So, it was great to see, the big displays coming back out for like the legends. And it was a nice kind of like pre-match little segment around all that after the flag was raised. They got the kind of highlights and stuff like that on the screen. Nice kind of announcement thing, nice kind of cheer for them. And I've managed to see the videos back, like the tifos were looking great. And it was good to see. I kind of hadn't really expected it going to the game, but as soon as I got there, I seen the wee thing. I was like, oh yeah, there should be a fair few displays on. And I was just thinking about Fergus McCann there as well. It's like it's a funny kind of convergence, isn't it, of the 90s, McCann and McStay, like in the stand and on the pitch. And, there's probably some sort of parallel you can draw there to what's going on at the moment and all the rest of it, like you've mentioned. But both of them in the building at the same time, that's a strike of lightning, isn't it?
It is, and it's important to look back, Kev, known insofar as, we've said this before, when we're talking about what the fans did back in the day, Kev, and we'll get to the action in just a few moments, ladies and gents, but we're not talking about boycotts, because the only reason Celtic fans boycotted the game, it was strategic to save the football club. Boycotting the game, it's a personal choice if someone doesn't want to buy a ticket from Newcastle or buy a football jersey, Kev, right? That's just a personal choice. And I would never say to another Celtic fan, this is how you support or otherwise your football club. Everybody supports the football club their own way. But boycotts for me harm the football club. They harm the club's ability to have these incredible figures, right? But it's about what we do with the figures. So the pressure, what Quinny was saying there, we hark back to the dark old days and obviously the rebirth of Celtic, but we're a generation on now. We're 31 years since Fergus took over at Celtic, Kevin. And I did think it was a fitting reminder to, here's a visionary Show a wee bit of vision in the boardroom.
Aye, I've got a few points to actually make there. I wonder if Fergus says to anybody, painted this place since I left.
Aye, what about phase 2? Aye, where's the murals? Exactly.
I wonder if he actually says that to anybody, because I must admit, the stadium's looking poor. They haven't even finished the banners at the Celtic end.
I know, and it's sell. And that's exactly what we do. We
I
sell.
noticed there were 3 cherry pickers there in the bus car park there. So whether they'll actually only be able to do it the day right enough with that wind. So I'm just wondering but that should have been well sorted.
Maybe they are visionaries, Kev. They knew that 7 months later there'd be another windy spell, so they're just waiting
until after putting them up, eh?
Possibly, yes.
I noticed that things are looking tired. That pothole on the way in to the bus park still hasn't been filled in.
Can we name it?
It's simple wee things like that.
Can we maybe call it the Simunovic pothole, because it's his birthday today? Let's just do that. Somebody get the spray paint out. It's a Jozo pothole, right?
There's some bus company's going to end up suing Celtic for their suspension gone across that pothole. The stadium is looking really, really tired. It is looking, and it was just when our supporters bus parked and you had a look at them like that just looks amateurish. That just really looks what he's doing.
You're talking about the banners that haven't been replaced.
Banners, aye. There's like that just really looks amateurish. That's not a very good look. With regards to the tifos as well, fair play to the lads for, at one point it looked like the banners were going to fly away because the wind was catching them, and fair play to them. They managed to actually, I think they lowered the John Clark one, because as it was going up the top tier, it was flapping everywhere, and they managed to get it down. So fair play to everybody involved in that, and they looked utterly spectacular. What you're talking about, boycotts and stuff with Fergus and that, you noticed that when they're in the stadium yesterday, and you see the guys, everybody, we've been called merchandise moaners on here all summer about the amount of merch and that they've punted. Well, I saw about 40,000 all wearing new merch yesterday. So
that black and green top has sold well. That's all I'm saying.
The black and green and the third kit, I saw some people wearing that. I also saw a couple of guys wearing the baseball jersey,
nice
as well, which looked all right. And this is when you see folk talking about boycotts and that. Now I'm sure a lot of the 40,000 are not online. I'm sure a lot of the 40,000 are not part of the noise of the small community that's online that are shouting for boycotts and stuff like that. I know boycotts when they work, because I've been involved in stuff like that, and it just, you can't tell folk what today, and other folk just want to go to the game. Like them yesterday, they want to buy a new Celtic top, they want to buy the new training kit and that's really that's up to them, And you can't stop folk doing that. I'm mayor now. If you want to protest, it has to be a visual protest, which is either you're chucking the tennis balls onto the park, which live on the telly, which brings notice, or you're doing walk-ins or walkouts, or you're turning your backs, or you're leaving parts of the stadium empty for the game, then that section's coming in. That's if we really want to protest, that's the way to do it, because as we all say, if we start withholding cash, it'll take years and years to actually make any difference. Years. And for it to make any difference whatsoever, the club needs to fall off a cliff.
No, big time. And that's what Jim talks about, Kev, isn't it? Every time.
The club needs to fall off a cliff. And as you said, Paul, it's got to come from within. I really enjoyed just going to the game yesterday. I really enjoyed
You've changed with age, though, Kev. Even in the 8 years you've been, in terms of your activism, you were more of an activist, I think, 8 years ago when we started on Acsom. So definitely, I don't know if that's come with a wee bit of age and mellowing out a wee bit as well. I would suggest.
Maybe does. It also maybe does that I can't waste my energy on lemons by telling them there's a cliff. If they're going to walk to the cliff anyway, and some folk just didn't want to listen, and that's fine. You can't. We see it on here as well, and it's just your opinion, but it's hard gone, and it's really quite hard to try and change people's opinion, especially when we're really successful domestically. Anyway, my European thing still stands. That still stands. I still want to see us win a knockout tie before I snuff it.
Before you're 50, we're running out of time. Before you're 50, we're running out of time.
Before I snuff it. I'm giving them hopefully another 15, 20 years.
You'll get it. You will get it, Kev. Right, we're going to be focusing on the game. So when we go into these games, the first game of the season, and you're looking at obviously the starting 11 coming out, and there's a bit of an excitement around that, Quinny, because you've had 7 pre-season games, and from the 7 pre-season games, I'm looking at the form of Trusty. I'm thinking Trusty's played really well. I was really impressed from all the signings. I was really impressed with Nygren. KT's almost a wee bit different because we kind of know KT and what he can do. But obviously seeing him coming back to competitive action was exciting. The big question leading into the game, who starts up front? I think most of us were saying Ida probably will. We'll be talking about his performance. But let's have a wee chat about the fact that when we look at the starting 11, only 2 new signings make the starting 11, Quinny. Only 1 make it to the bench, and he's an unused sub. The rest of them don't feature. We've got from last season's big 3 signings, we all know who we're talking about. 1 of them starts the game, and that's Adam Ida. The other 2 come off the bench. And also, we have clearly signed a player who was sitting in the stand with the Celtic merch on, going back onto the merch mourners. We've not announced that yet, so I don't know if they wanted to get Flag Day, then Champions League draw, and then we maybe get onto GSB as named by Kevin Graham. So in terms of the start 11, going into the game, Quinny, what was your thoughts about that? Were you a bit surprised that Trusty dropped to the bench, Nygren started? What was your thoughts?
The only thing I kind of missed from what I thought was going to happen for the predicted 11 or for the starting 11 was the Scales Trusty thing. I thought Trusty was nailed on to play in defence after the pre-season he had. So quite a big statement from the manager. Although I do think it maybe is a little bit more of like the game tactic rather than anything else, because as you see throughout the game, obviously later on, Tierney comes off for Trusty and Scales moves into left back. And I think knowing that that's probably the game plan, because, you know, I recorded my review of the game earlier, but I was kind of saying like Tierney looked great in this game. I think everyone would say like he played some great balls into the box. He looked quite lively and whatever, but he never really got out of third gear. You know, I think he only went round Dyson once. He got to the byline maybe 3 times in the game or something. It wasn't as if he was like constantly flying down the left-hand side for us. Defensively, he was really good. Obviously, just really denied anything happening down that side of the pitch. But if they know the plan is Tierney's not going to play 90, there's no Inamura on the bench, would you rather Scales get up to the pace of the game and then just dive into left back, or would you rather bring Scales out the cold to go into left back? So I think it was maybe more of a choice of
makes sense, mate. Yep.
You know, doing it that way, just seeing the game, you know, in its totality at this point. But that was for the starting 11. That was the only surprise. I think we all kind of knew logically it was going to be Ida, although Kenny was lively in pre-season. Yamada impressed off the bench, and Nygren as well. I said I think he just played far too much in pre-season not to start in midfield the way things had went. So yeah, I think Scales for Trusty was the only thing that caught me by surprise.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So you're actually thinking about 3 or 4 different eventualities there by picking Scales. And by the way, we'll get on to his performance, because he is a man, love him or loathe him, and he does divide opinion, and he probably will continue to divide opinion. He was excellent yesterday. I watched the game again this morning. I always do that, Kev. You know, if I'm at the game or if we do a fan zone, you're just enjoying the game. You're not really analysing the game, Kev, you know, and I think you can be swayed by the people you're with and all that. So I sat down this morning and I had read all the social media outpourings last night, and I had a vibe as to how unhappy some people were about the performance. Watched it this morning, got a kind of different take on it. You remove the emotion, don't you, when you watch it again? Got a slightly different take. I completely controlled the game. Weren't bothered at the back at all. I think Kasper Schmeichel makes a save that, you know, he probably made it look a wee bit more difficult than it was, because he didn't catch it. He just kind of punched it away. And we created a lot of chances. It was just, you know, we weren't clinical with the finishing. And that is an issue when we come to speak about Adam Ida, because he was more or less on the end of most of the good chances. So it wasn't a particularly bad performance. It wasn't a great performance, but I don't think we learned much from it, Kev. We didn't learn much from the performance. Going into the game, though, because we already knew, that's what I mean. We didn't learn anything we didn't already know about coming up against a Stephen Robinson St Mirren side. Right, we know they're going to play the low block. We know that they're going to be big, strong, physical, well-organised, and we're going to have to break them down. So left to right until we do so. Change of personnel, no change of shape. And eventually we got there. We got there in the end. There's going to be if we don't change the personnel or the shape, Kev, there's going to be a lot more days like yesterday this season, isn't there?
There is, and one of the main things that we were talking about towards the end of last season was a lack of creativity in the midfield, and we were pinning our hopes on Rio Hatate, and we still had that lack of. We started off well, then we got to a point where we went back to the horseshoe of doom, and it got quite tedious in the second half. And by the time you got to about 60, 65 minutes, you were going, I'll take any victory now. I just want a victory and let's just get away with this and we'll see what's happening. I think the lack of creativity comes from the fact that the two wide boys were minging until James Forrest came on. And they offered nothing. And I'm including Maeda and that, absolutely offered nothing. And as soon as Forrest comes on, he starts taking the full back on. The full back doesn't know what's actually happening then. Mm-hmm. So I reckon and it was a bit like towards the end of last season, I thought the midfield was getting an awful lot of stick, where I was looking at our wide boys and going, you're not contributing either. You're not actually doing nothing, especially on the right-hand side of it. You're not doing nothing either, to give these boys a dig out. It was the same problems that we had towards the end of last season. We're on show again after a really, really bright start. I found the relationship between Maeda and Tierney quite unusual, whereas they just seem to actually play short passes to each other as if they go, right, who's going on the outside? I'll play it to you, play it back, and just there didn't seem to be much connection there, and that'll come. Whereas I was just shouting at Tierney, just knock it across the top and tell Dyson to run, because Tierney can play that ball, and I was going, just get it, Kieran, play it across the top and tell Dyson to get in behind it.
Yeah,
but as you say, St Mirren weren't any surprise. They didn't offer much up front, but I thought our two centre backs were absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. I thought Scales and Cameron Carter-Vickers were immense. Scales was my man of the match. Yeah, was really my man of the match until he went to left back, and it was quite painful to try and watch him trying to create stuff, running up that left wing. He just looked like a fish out of water up there. He really
did. It's not his position. It's not.
Not at all. I did get worried at that point when Tierney went down. We didn't in the stadium. We didn't know whether it was cramp or whether it was an injury, but right away he's signalling to the bench to come off, and you're like that. Oh no, like it's nothing each at that point. I think McGregor's goal had just got chopped off, or was it a couple of minutes later that McGregor's goal got chopped off? So there was a whole sort of wee 5-minute period when he went, this is all gone wrong for us today, and he just wanted any sort of victory whatsoever. But then when you saw Scales going to left back, he wasn't the best at left back for the last 20, 25 minutes. But for me, he was still our man in the match because he was superb at centre half. But Scales, we know the level that Scales is at. And as a football club, we should be aiming better, but we should be aiming better in an awful lot of areas of that pitch. And that's not a slight on Scales. That's not at all. Scales whatsoever.
You watch him yesterday, Kev, you say, well, he can comfortably play at this level. Comfortably. And there's a lot of games like yesterday that we will experience this season domestically. And Scales is so comfortable playing in that kind of environment. But like you say, and like we talk about a lot in Acsom, we are looking at Champions League qualifiers. We're looking at getting into that league stage of game. We're looking about being an ambitious football club and having a wee bit of drive. And that is at that point, and people will even in the comments say, well, actually, Scales has performed pretty well in some Champions League games. Absolutely, I get that. I totally get that. But I don't think that if you are going to go season on season, that Scales is a great backup, Kev, for me. He's a great backup. I was surprised to see him in the starting lineup. He was a man of the match. I'm not one of his biggest critics. So I can see that when I'm looking through that sphere, I can see that, you know, the optics might be a wee bit different for me because I'm not a massive critic of Liam Scales, but I know where he is in the squad, and I just think as a backup, left centre back, I'm pretty happy with Liam Scales. I've got to say, my frustration would be, Quinny, and I know you look a lot at football shape and you know how you're playing in possession against out of possession, etc., attacking, defending. I'm looking at that and thinking, was there a real necessity because to actually put him to the left back? Because why not just go three at the back at that point? Bring Trusty and go three at the back. Because I just felt we're going for the goal here. None each for me is just like, come on, it's not even thinkable. AJ and KT, until Kieran Tierney goes off 3 minutes before that goal that McGregor scores, Kevin. We'll talk about that as well.
Again, it was a wee 5 minute spell where everything seemed to go, oh, you're like, oh, no.
Yeah. The dynamic definitely does change. But I think those two fullbacks were our biggest threat, much bigger threat than the wingers, like Kev says. They were pretty non-existent. So even just push AJ up and he can come and track back if we're under the cosh. But we're going for the winner here, Quinny, and that sometimes is a bit of frustration to me. Just play three at the back.
It felt like it was maybe leaning towards that. You know, it was something I kind of spoke about quite a lot in my analysis video. Will be out later today. But Alistair John, so there was a moment where, excuse me, when he makes that triple sub and he brings on McCowen, Engels and Kenny. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, Alistair Johnson was my man of the match. Like, I think quite similarly to Scales, like just nobody get anywhere near him defensively. But on top of that, Alistair Johnson was like, he was our defensive midfielder yesterday. Like, anytime the ball was getting turned over in like the St Mirren defensive third or our attacking third or whatever, Alistair Johnson so often was the guy shutting it down, making sure they didn't get out their half or it was harder for them to do so, or he won the ball back. And like you say, with him and Tierney, throughout the game, a common feature of it was these kind of lofty, curly balls, trying to get either straight down the pipe or trying to get it in and behind for maybe Dyson or Negren or Yang or something like that. And Alistair Johnson played a few of them brilliantly in the final third or in the kind of the St Mirren half, but also for the Dyson chance right at the end, where even in the defensive third, as soon as he wins it, he knows the type of ball he's playing. He's putting into space for somebody to get onto. So I would have taken off Alistair Johnson on paper at that point and went two up top with Kenny and Ida. Like, if you're looking at it, because you've already got Scales, Trusty and Vickers on. You've already made the sub for Forrest and Yang, so that's kind of difficult to bring Forrest off and move AJ to the right mid or whatever. But at that point in the game, 13 minutes to go, 0-0, nothing's happening. To take Ida off for Kenny, it's just mad flashbacks again to like the beginning of Ange and him not like going two up top at times when it felt like we could, and it was always dead robotic. Like Kyogo would come off for somebody, Hatate would come off for somebody, and it would just be like for like. There would be no throw the kitchen sink at it kind of move. So with the Scales thing, I thought, oh, maybe this does shape up for something like that to happen. And obviously it didn't. But I think a big part of that might have just been like Alistair Johnson he played about 4 positions yesterday. Like, and he was
outstanding.
It was unreal. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to take him off. But yeah, I thought it could have happened.
Yeah, and it becomes frustrating because people say, "Oh, well, you know, you don't know football," and it's like, right, there's this real onus on never ever playing two up top, and people explain it to you, and you think, create a bit of chaos. St Mirren have been working on their defensive game plan all week, confuse them a wee bit, throw a cat amongst the pigeons, you know. Kev, sorry, I cut you off there, mate.
No, that substitution, Quinny, I really thought it was because we didn't. We could take off Ida and replace him with a striker, but we couldn't move Maeda through the middle because we didn't have a left winger on the bench. So that's where I thought that substitution came from. Because really, you could have hooked Maeda. If you had a left winger on the bench, you could have hooked him, or you could have tried to move him through the middle. But I think it was just a complete and utter lack of options on the bench that surprised that he went to Kenny.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
I don't... Again, does that put? It probably doesn't say nothing about Yamada or anybody like that. He's probably just went with Kenny. Go right. You can these brutes at the back. Go and try and do something because we're now getting a bit of joy. We Forrest is giving us that wee bit of joy, and we might make the breakthrough eventually. So he's chucked on Kenny. I think he's chucked on Kenny mainly because there's no way of putting Maeda through the middle because there's nobody on the bench to play in the left wing.
Yeah, and at that point, Kev, your only option is Forrest left and Negrin right, but Negrin ran out of puff. I want to talk a wee bit about him. He ran out of puff. Now, again, last night, I'm looking at the reaction to this game, and a wee bit actually live watching it, doing it bad, and you would have been believing that Nygren didn't have a good game. So I watched it back today. I was quite surprised at that. I thought he was very good in pre-season. The one thing I noticed pre-season, Quinny, is he really did run out of steam against Ajax. And it was like, as soon as that happened, they had to come off. He had nothing left. And that's where he's misplaced pass for a goal, etc. I watched it with interest today because, I want Nygren. I want everybody to do well. But I'm looking at Nygren. I like what he's got. I like the fact that he's coming in. He's carrying the ball really, really well, Quinny, into the opposition half. He's a strong runner with the ball. He's a ball carrier. Something that not every midfielder we've got does all that well. And I think, obviously, he had a great chance. He hits the bar. I thought he did all right as a debut. I really do. I mean, on 2 occasions, he loses the ball on 2 occasions. Now, when you look at how many passes he completed, it's probably a tiny percentage of the time that he's lost the ball. One of them was brutal. It was where the ball breaks to him and it just hits off him and goes past for a by kick. And maybe it's fresh in the memory, as well as he took every corner as well. Not every corner looked as though there was a good result. So perhaps that was fresh in the mind. In terms of Nygren, no, I thought Nygren was very positive, Quinny, for his first start at Celtic Park. The reason he comes off, though, is because he was done. He was absolutely a spent force at that stage, I think.
Yeah, I think Kev was quite spot on. Like the first half there was a good kind of zip in the play and everything looked quite fun. And a big part of that was, like for me anyway, like the midfield they were as connected as they've ever been. Normally, like last season, we would see like Hatate out on the left, Engels out on the right, and then everyone kind of, does their thing in the middle to kind of join the team up or whatever. But yesterday, Hatate, McGregor and Nygren were like going around as a triple. They were going around as a pack of 3 wherever the ball was, just kind of keeping up with play or whatever. And it felt like we had a wee bit more to kind of go through the middle of the pitch. But because of the kind of stuff we've already mentioned, maybe about Ida and the wingers or whatever, it made it really tough for them to really get much. Like, outside of Ida, like nobody else really got any chances inside the box. Everything was really just kind of on the last man or across the face of goal. There was no like kind of, get bodies in and around the box and stuff like that. And I think a part of that was because like all of them were getting involved in the play quite deep. They were all getting involved and there was some lovely play between the 3 of them, where maybe 2 of them would link up and get the ball through the middle of the pitch and then try and play to Maeda or Yang or Ida or whatever before it broke down. But I think without 3 guys doing that's a bit too much, because as you've seen when Hatate kind of ran out of ideas, I felt in this in that shape yesterday, kind of shortly before he came off. And Nygren, it was maybe a bit more energy. There was moments in the first half where Nygren would be getting the ball off of Vickers or whatever because of the rotations. And I don't know, I think if you're allowing Hatate and Nygren to really go around the way you want them to, it's great to see McGregor kind of popping through the middle and doing stuff like that as well. But you should maybe just give him a bit more of what we've seen before from him, where he does almost become a first centre-back at times, because having all 3 of them go box to box, line to line, you're really going to max them out quite quickly. And St Mirren, for one of the things about St Mirren you really notice with them live is, and again I think I've seen it on some of the sports scene analysis, but like they just cut off passing spaces. They just cut off lanes and areas to move into. So those guys are doing a lot of hard work in like the middle of the pitch to maybe create a little bit of space. And if he does like pushing the back line up and he wants it on the last man on the shoulder, there's nobody then to play football with, and then it breaks down, somebody gets shoulder to shoulder with you, a foul or whatever. So it was good to see from the midfield, but I don't think I would be putting any onus or blame or criticism towards the midfield in the first half. The second half, they kind of ran out of stuff, like we said, but I thought they all played well. No one really got mugged off. No one really made any mistakes. Nobody really got caught out of position for anything. But no. I just think they were all given too much to do of the same thing. It went nowhere.
And he ran himself into the ground, didn't he, Nygren? Kev,
Quinny, do you think Nygren and Hatate, I'll go to your knowledge on this, because I didn't really know much about coaching or football tactics or anything like that. But do you think that both of them, as you say, St Mirren blocked off passing lanes, right? And Rodgers is very positional. The way that he plays football is very positional, very possession-based. It's very studied, even though sometimes it doesn't look studied. It is a very studied way that the players know, and football's changing. Do you think that Hatate and Nygren are getting told, and McGregor, with this constant rotation, you're going to need to break the lines? These wee passing things are not going to work. So to break teams down, you're going to need to carry the ball. And that just led to them all looking shattered by about 70 odd minutes yesterday.
I think, so you notice a big difference with Tierney, like, and not being Taylor. And we spoke about the kind of Alistair Johnson thing earlier. But like before, we would have like Taylor kind of coming in and carrying either a marker with him, moving someone else into some space, maybe even getting on the ball and moving stuff around. And because that's not really, even with Alistair Johnson, he wasn't really doing that from the middle, even though he was stepping into that kind of defensive midfield spot. So I think it's more a case of like, it's kind of like the frame of the team is now around the midfield rather than the frame of the team kind of being in the wide areas, is a kind of hard way to kind of put it into words. But I think it's a case of like you three are like, you heard Rodgers' comments. It's about moving the ball. You've kind of said the same thing as well, of course. Like, move the ball with speed, intensity, tempo, move them out of position. They're the only ones that really have freedom to take up different positions on the pitch. Tierney staying wide, Maeda's staying wide, Yang and Alistair Johnson for the most part are staying wide. Ida's pushing the back three away. So it's really up to them to move everywhere and get into people's blind spots and giving goals or whatever. So like I say, I just think it's a little bit too much heavy lifting for them. And that's why when Kenny comes on, like, Ida had one or two moments where he kind of dropped deep and he didn't really get much joy out of it. Maybe bought us a free kick on the halfway line once or twice, but it never really amounted to anything. Kenny looks like a much better football player, but like I don't know, like he is a bit, I don't want to use size against the kid because it doesn't mean everything at this level if you are good enough, but he had really good movement and he had very few touches in the game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say he did something incredible or whatever, but he was really quick at moving around and being available to people that were moving up the pitch. And Ida's never really available to anyone moving up the pitch. So I think the midfield just had too much heavy lifting to do. Whereas then we talk about the two up front thing. If you could have Kenny doing that kind of smart footballer stuff and you leave Ida on the sweeper Gogic, you then get the best of both, and you kind of stack the odds in your favour then.
But that's the thing. That's one of the things that people are scouting and using data for now. Now it's not just what guys do on the ball. They're tracking what they do off the ball and what they can create with no having the ball and making runs. I read an article about it and I found that really actually interesting. That you go, that guy doesn't really get involved and he gets a big move, and they go, well, we didn't see the work that he actually does off the ball to actually create space for others. I think it was Cody Gampo they were talking about actually, the amount of work. And I just found that interesting when you mentioned that with Kenny. He didn't have too many touches, but he created a problem without actually touching the ball, which is a really interesting for a coach's point of view. For a fan's point of view, you just want your striker to stick the ball in the back of the net and be involved, but sometimes you just didn't see that.
Interestingly enough, the game has changed so much. I mean, I remember Pierre getting asked about the fact that he looked really lazy. I remember when he came to Scotland, someone had the audacity to ask him that. He just says, why run about when I've not got the ball? And that wasn't that long ago, but that was his attitude. Give me the ball and I'll run with it. Claire Menery on the YouTube. Why can't we just call players by their proper names? I'm looking forward next season, Claire, to have an AJ.
I pronounced them wrong.
AJ, KT, CCV and GSP. There you go. That back four. Cannot wait. And I'll think of you in that as announced, Claire.
AJ for me comes because we did have Mikey Johnson in the squad for a while.
That's
so
true.
It was like there was a Johnson thing. So that's just kind of burned into the back of my brain from that. So noted.
CCV's always been CCV, isn't it?
Also, did the players not call Alistair Johnson AJ as well?
And KT. Yeah, they do. And
So
yesterday,
there's a bit of
thing. It's a football thing, isn't it? I mean,
I just pronounced the names wrong anyway, so I'm sticking with.
We're helping Kev out, Claire. Stop giving him a hard time. Even yesterday, Paul McStay talked about Tommy Burns. TB calls him TB. There you go. Right, I'm going to bring in some of these great comments. So I want to move on a wee bit more of a focus on three players, Yang, Ida and McCowen, of course. And Pinball talks about McCowen on the YouTube. McCowen looks like he came back from a summer of being on the weights. Why he is not first name on the sheet, I don't know. I do, because I don't think that last season he done enough to be the first name on the team sheet. But yesterday he comes on and he wins us that game. And as I said in the tagline, he saves Flag Day for us. Going into this season, again, players I'm a critic of, I would say McCowen probably falls into that category. Because coming into this season, for me, he's the bottom choice as a midfielder. Right, I actually have him below Bernardo, and that's just a discussion we can have. Maybe it's a perception thing, But at this moment in time, sitting this morning watching that game, the only issue I've got with McCowen at the moment, Quinny, is his moustache. Get it shaved off, mate. Everything else, absolutely buzzing for him. He comes on and saves the day. He does look as though he's beefed up a bit, which is great. Love that. Just working on your physical edge. And he comes on straight off the bat. It looks as though he had that willingness just to win the game for us. Jamesy Forrest had that when he came on as well. And he gets his goal. Where is he in the pecking order? Bernardo didn't make an appearance yesterday. Where is McCowen for you? Is he above Bernardo? It looks as though he is in Brendan's eyes.
Yeah, I think, but it's funny because you mentioned this over the last week or two, and I can't remember if I spoke about this with you like on a stream or if it was just one of my videos I kind of picked up on it. But for me, McCowen's one of the safest players in the squad, like so low maintenance, cost, everything. And when you look at the midfield, like he is like the only out and out attacking midfielder that we've got to kind of call upon from the second string. Like if you don't have him on the bench yesterday, like imagine you did put Bernardo and Engels on at that point. If you got any confidence that we're going to be really pushing the envelope at that point, and trying to make something happen. And Bernardo's got a wee bit of form for hitting one from the edge of the box. I get that, fine. But McCowen for me, like, yeah, I think he's got a really stable place in the squad. It's not necessarily that means he's super important or he's first choice in the team sheet or whatever, but I say homegrown, kind of prime age of his career, relatively low cost expense, all that kind of stuff. And like last year, actually, for me anyway, some of Engels' best performances were with McCowen as a kind of. So when they came on together, I thought that was quite a nice kind of pair to see come on at that moment to try and give us something. And I think McCowen's like, yeah, very valuable player on the squad. Like same kind of thing that you're kind of saying about Scales. Like, like for any game domestically, if you had to, you'd play him gladly and you wouldn't really worry about it too much. You wouldn't lose any sleep. And McCowen's kind of the same, really. Like if you started that game yesterday, it would have been a shock and everything, but it wouldn't have let you down for the most part. Would they have always been on to win the match? If coming off the bench just gives you a good chance of that, obviously, because you're fresh and it's the back end of the match and whatever. But maybe not. But I think you really know what you're getting from McCowen. And again, it's the same sort of thing that I like about Kenny. I like about Scales. I like about maybe one or two other players that maybe escaping me at the moment. But you can tell that they're really playing like it could be their last game. Like they really don't want to make a mistake. They really want to put everything out there. They want to give everything for the team, and they want to just celebrate with the fans ultimately, when it's all said and done. So I thought it was a great one for him. I heard someone talk about his statistics as well. I forget the number, but he basically appeared in every game last year, minus maybe Champions League. He barely featured at all. But domestically, like he's, I say similar to Scales, Forrest, Ralston, they're like, you can play them domestically and you don't even think about it or worry about it.
No, it's a good point. And we've all got our favourites, obviously, but McCowen's one of the ones that's taken me quite a while to get on the McCowen train, Kev. I'm a big Bernardo fan, but I don't know. Last season, he didn't really make much progress in the Celtic team. I know there were injuries that played their part in that. I don't know if we're in the market for another midfield player, Kev, but it looks as though Bernardo's last choice at the minute. I mean, I don't think it was because we're playing St Mirren and Brendan Rodgers looked at it and thought McCowen would particularly match against St Mirren. It's just that, goal threat, creativity, you're looking at that bench, you're thinking McCowen is the best option at that stage. And of course, he wins the game for us. It does look physically as though he has been working on that as well, Kev. Bernardo, McCowen, who's the bottom choice for you? If we get an opportunity before the window closes to bring in a better option, right? There's people in the comments actually saying that they would sell Engels. We've been listening to that for about 12 months now, right? Who's the midfielder surplus to requirements? Because at the moment it looks like it's Bernardo to me.
It does look like it. I think this is a sort of problem with recruitment, and Alan Morrison will say this, and I'll refer to Alan Morrison when we signed Bernardo and Engels. They both went, I didn't see them as Celtic players. Their skill set didn't suit what we actually want players to do. And what Quinny says there when we brought on McCowen yesterday, it was only possibly creative option that we had on the bench to come on for the midfield. I mean, we brought on Engels and I didn't expect him to do anything. And that is maybe a damning indictment of where I'm at with Engels. But you're trying to, you want somebody to come there and try to break down a defence. And I didn't think Engels was that player, but I understood where he came on because there's no another creative. There's not. You need to bring on another body because your two creative midfielders are now done. So I need to bring on another body, and you go, right, Arnie, come on. By the way, just go and take set place. That's all you seem to be there for anyway, yeah.
But don't get caught offside once you've done it. That was unbelievable in the corner.
That was
honestly, that's so frustrating at this level. So frustrating at this level, getting caught offside at a bloody corner that you've just taken.
So when you get to that point, you're bringing on McCowan because he's the only one that's got any sort of creativity. And even though I didn't watch any of the pre-seasons, he scored a couple of goals in pre-season. He likes to have a dig for the edge of the box, which him and McGregor just seem to be more natural at taking digs for the edge of the box. What I would bring in another midfielder, and Nath says I would bring in another midfielder. I think they're very, very samey in the middle of the park, and we need an absolute out-and-out defensive midfielder for when we play in Europe and the better teams and some of the tough away games that we've got in Scotland. We do need a bit of muscle in there. And I was thinking that yesterday when I was watching our midfield. I'm going, we're still missing something in there. There's a presence missing in there. So I'm all for bringing in an arm midfielder. Really are all for bringing in an arm midfielder.
Sorry, mate.
Truthfully, anyone out of Engels and Bernardo, as long as we get decent cash for it, I wouldn't miss.
Well, you wouldn't. This is a big thing. We had a discussion over the weekend about the 3 big buys, and obviously only one of them started at the weekend. And there's all this thing about, we've overpaid X, Y, and Z. My take on this, Quinny, with the 3 players, and I said this at the time, I don't think we would lose much money. I honestly don't, because what has gone so awry in terms of their data, has that gone down the tube since we bought them? No. I mean, if you want to focus on Engels, he's never full international player with a Champions League campaign under his belt. So I've got no qualms about losing. I don't think we'd lose money, massive money. I think you'd lose money on Ida. If Ida was to leave the building, I think you would lose money on him. And when I seen those, was it Udinese links last week, straight off the bat, I'm thinking that's the agent trying to get that January 2024 Italian interest back in Ida. Is he looking for a move? Because when I seen that, and it's been checked out, you've done a bit of digging yourself, Quinny, on the Adam Ida stuff. It's been checked out, and it doesn't really suffice to anything. It doesn't, there's nothing to it. There's no weight to the story. And when I hear that, I just think, well, that's the agent trying to get it out there to Italy, that Ida wants a move, or there's an interested club in Italy, because they very much were interested in January 24 when we brought him in on loan. If that's the case, that means he's been instructed to do that by the player. So, he's the only guy for me that I think we would lose substantially on, £2 or £3 million on, I would say.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. I think, Ida was very frustrating yesterday because he didn't do anything particularly great. Like, he got the ball into feet a few times, but he couldn't really get round a defender. He couldn't really stand them off. And a few times, if he did get the ball, and if he did have control of the ball, he went backwards. He actually just roamed into nowhere, and then the ball went back, and then he's out of the box. He's out of everything. But again, like, Tierney plays a great ball in for him, a better strike, or a better header of the ball certainly finishes that. He hit the woodwork a fair few times, maybe a wee bit more composure, or a wee bit of luck changes that as well. But it's it's not the same maybe talent scale, because I think everyone kind of had this wee soft spot for Mikey Johnson, but it's maybe a little bit of that. Like, I heard people talking about the pressure. I've kind of long said about Ida, like, I feel that if he is like challenged by another centre forward, he get like when it was between him and Kyogo, when he was a permanent player, he never really seemed to get going properly. Obviously, he was always fighting for minutes or whatever, but as soon as Kyogo was out the building, he just kind of looked a wee bit taller. He seemed a bit faster. Things hit the back of the net, and then Maeda kind of caught fire through the middle of the pitch, and then that kind of waned a little bit for Ida again. So I don't know if there's some sort of like mental block there as it stands for him at the moment. But yeah, it may be one of those ones where it's just not worked, and it's not a bad thing for anyone all involved or whatever. And if he's maybe feeling that way, or his agent fancies himself a chance to move abroad, then it might just be one of those ones that's best for all involved. But it doesn't seem to be that way if you listen to the player or the manager talk. They're all quite still, like, this is the sort of profile we want to go for. We believe in Adam and all that kind of thing as well. And very fine margins, but again, it's one of those ones where he gets like a lot of chances and isn't converting. And that was the main worry around paying 9 million for him in the first place, was that like he's a striker, he'll get like 20 goals over the season, he'll find them somehow, somewhere. But will they be in those crunch matches? Like I did a video, this is the last thing I'll say about it, I'll stop ranting. But I did a video over the summer, I did a wee series called Report Cards and kind of looked at some players in terms of like how they did last year. You know, report card kind of gives you the gist of what was probably in it. And one thing about Adam Idah is like his goals last season. I don't think any of his goals, maybe there was like 2 or 3 maximum. I'm not remembering it well, so feel free to check the video out. But minimal amount of his goals actually changed a fixture. You know, so if you remove his goals from the game, we would have still won 2-0. We would have still won 3-1, or you know, whatever it might have been. So his goals weren't really actually coming in decisive moments. And in games like yesterday, that's when you're looking at your striker, is those moments where it's like, you know, nip and tuck and fine margins, killer instinct to be at the right place, put your body on the line, get something on it, a head, a toe, a knee, a shoulder, whatever. And yeah, he's maybe just not quite there for that.
No, you're right. And again, one of the ones, Quinny, I just I can't imagine the meltdown if we get rid of him before bringing in another striker. Ridiculizer, in you come. I actually thought we played less crab football yesterday, and we're looking to get it forward quicker. Hatate and Tierney with early balls into Dice and Idah. I thought Nygren, Hatate and Tierney were excellent at that yesterday.
In the first half, I agree with that. I agree with that comment in the first half.
So what changed? Was it St Mirren? Did they change to try and combat that, Kev, for you? Or was it a wee bit more like what Quinny was saying in terms of us running out a bit of steam and having to make the changes?
Us running out of a bit of steam, and also too many players willing to play it safe, and maybe the pressure getting to them a wee bit when the first goal's not coming and they're looking for other folk to try and bail them out. Like the sort of problems we had to the end of last season. I can't fault the work rate of the players. I can't look at that park and say there's anybody hiding. But when they get the ball, there's too many of them too often willing to take that safe option.
The worst for me, Kev, the worst one for me yesterday was Jan. He took the safe option every time, never grasped the nettle, never, you know, he wasn't the guy that says, right, I'm going to drive, I'm going to create a chance, I'm going to take a shot, I'm going to cut inside. I saw none of that from Yang yesterday. Not an ounce of it.
It was the same at the cup final.
Yeah.
For me, Yang yesterday showed why my opinion's not changed. It's changed from our close season. And I want them to change it. I really do want them to change it, because, I mean, it doesn't look like we're going to bring in another winger anytime soon. Anytime soon. It's like everything's been sort of quiet on that front. You were talking about Idah. We seem to ask Idah to do things that he hasn't got the ability to do, like pass the ball, hold it up, header the ball towards goal, stay on side. It's we have not got we haven't got a first choice right winger. We haven't got a first choice centre forward. And games like yesterday are going to like be that. We're going to get more.
Yeah.
We're going to get more and more of that, and we're going to put Audrey on Sunday, and our away form's been honking in 2025, and there was nothing I saw yesterday makes me very, very confident of believing that is going to change on Sunday.
You know your point, Kev. We Yang.
And there was positives yesterday, but we haven't got a first choice striker, we haven't got a first choice right winger, and Maeda was honking yesterday. So
another 1v1 like the one in the cup final and against Rangers.
I'm going to give the centre half the credit for that one.
He should strike it with a second touch, mate.
The recovery for the centre half was superb.
I know, but if he strikes with a second touch, he doesn't get the opportunity. That's my big take for that. Watching it this morning, and that is 3 1v1s for Maeda. But I mean, you know, he's not in the rhythm, I don't think, of a centre forward at that stage of the game. Yang, what I say about Yang, and it's not just all about bashing the player, absolutely not. But we shouldn't be in a position, Quinny, where we're delaying moves for Yang and Tilio because we've got nobody else. That is to the point of embarrassment. That you know, we've got teams who want to buy Yang, we've got a team who want to take Tilio on loan with an obligation to buy, the transfer fee and everything's been agreed, yet we're holding on to them because we didn't have someone in their place. That for me is a huge frustration, and I'm pretty sure it is for Brendan Rodgers as well.
Yeah, it's definitely beyond frustrating, isn't it? Brendan did say in pre-season, Yang is a starting winger for us now, as it is right now. So he did call it before the game. I thought that might have been one of the small pieces of sentiment in the team sheet for yesterday. Might have been he starts Forrest for Flag Day, but I thought he has called Yang a starting winger. So if he is sending messages up the chain, then you have to start him after that. But I get Yang didn't really do anything in the game. I think he had a wee mazy run like inside the pitch that maybe kind of bobbled into something. I forget what came of it in the end. I thought he did all right at linking up with Nygren in little spells. I'm talking about maybe the first 15, 20 minutes, a few nice wee passes. Nothing incredible, that you would write home about or whatever. But when you're looking for him on starting that game yesterday to try and start the new season, starting a fresh foot, be the best version of himself. And he didn't really take that chance. I think St Mirren, again, take a lot of credit for how tight they were defensively. There's just not much space to play into. But there's definitely frustrations on the wings because, like, Forrest comes on for 32 minutes and looks like, 5 years younger by comparison to what we got from Yang in the first 60. He was just a bit more on the front foot. He was just a bit more confident and did a few of those kind of similar mazy runs where he kind of just runs into a crowd and takes a marker with him, and then he can cut it back for McGregor, or it bobbles to Ida for a shot. Something happens. But it's not the same as having Kuhn. It's not the same as having Jota. It's not the same as even peak Dyson. We're talking about Dyson. I think there's a little bit of the breakdown. I think Dyson's performance comes a little bit from the breakdown of Tierney starting in there. I think in the first half, there was 2 or 3 occasions where Dyson's like on the line, waiting for the ball to get played into space, and Tierney's played him into feet. And like you said earlier, there's just some passing between them, and you didn't really get. You get played into space a few times, Dyson. Don't get me wrong, but there was just a wee bit of that missing. But we just didn't have that same level of threat from the wide areas at all, which then again it just puts the magnifying glass on Ida even more so, I think, from that. So you really notice what we're missing in the wide areas. You're right.
What I will say, and I'm not going to say it. If Ida and Yang were playing for St Mirren yesterday, you wouldn't have batted an eyelid. You wouldn't have batted an eyelid whatsoever if they were playing for St Mirren yesterday. What I'm more worried about is I think we need freshened up. Either we need freshened up with personnel, and I think we need freshened up tactically. And maybe that'll come when new personnel arrives through the door, when whatever needs to get sorted behind the scenes gets sorted. But we're extremely stale, and we're in need of a refresh. And I must admit, I loved scoring a late winner yesterday. There's nothing better than scoring a late winner and you bounce at the ground after singing to Kieran Tierney and all of that. I love that. That's one of the joyous bits of the
Just didn't fall in that pothole, Kev. Just didn't fall in that.
I know. Well, I'll need to. I'm going to get some cones and put it round it, and like green and white cones and round that pothole. I mean, I like. It's great to get away with the 3 points. It's brilliant, and I think that's where I'm at with the game. When we went there, we were rotten, got the 3 points. A bit like the game where David Turnbull scored two opening seasons ago, and when Rodgers, when he dropped a tatty, brought in Turnbull, and Turnbull scored a penalty. Was it a penalty?
Got man of the match, David Turnbull. I think it was against Ross County, wasn't it?
And yesterday had that same sort of vibe that there's something not quite right there. And it was the same sort of that first season vibe when Rodgers came back. But we've got weeks to change it. And it could get changed. Could get changed this week. They could have a fantastic week in training. We could batter Aberdeen. Who knows? But what we've actually seen yesterday in the first competitive game, it just had that wee bit of stale vibe and something not quite right.
We could also bring in new players, Kev. And what I would say there, right now, as I sit here just now, I would play Nygren before I played Yang. I'd play Nygren on the right, and I'd bring in either McCowen or Engels or whoever's on form back into the midfield. As much as I like what he's brought to the midfield, I just don't trust Yang. I don't trust Tilio. He wasn't even on the bench yesterday. And Forrest, for me, is your 30-minute player at the moment, Quinny. So until such times as we find that right winger, who's your first pick, I'm not playing Yang, and I'm not playing Tilio either. And I would actually just formalise their moves and move them on.
Yeah, I think I was speaking to a few people that suspected that might have been the way Brendan went today, like just played the actual best 11 players, and Yang's probably not getting into that. As you know, we can chat about the squad. But I think what we'll see from sorry, Gav, I'll just say this, I'll let you take it. But I think what we'll see from Aberdeen next week is a tell towards what Rodgers thinks he'll play in Champions League qualifiers or whatever, because Aberdeen away will be more physical. It will be less of a football match than it will be against St Mirren. So I think that because that midfield three, the first thing you're worried about is the physicality in midfield, isn't it, against bigger, stronger players? So sorry, I was just
dirtier players as well against Aberdeen. That was a big feature of their team last season.
No, Quinny, you're probably right there. You're probably at a point where you go, well, who's the 11 best players that we've actually got, and try to fit them into the team. But you're also maybe at a point where you maybe go to Engels and go, well, you played as a wide right-hand side almost winger for Augsburg. So go and play on the right-hand side of a front three and see what you can do there. Like, you might even get to the McCowan situation where you go, you're going to need to play wide because something might happen during the game, and you go, right, we're going to need to utilise you as a winger. And we should not be discussing that as an absolute possibility. But as we sit here at 1:31, like on the 4th of August, that is a possibility, and that's frightening.
It is. That is frightening. It's squad management, Kev. But before we retire for this afternoon, one question: Gogic handball, Cal McGregor goal. I'm going to come to you first, Quinny. Right, wrong? What do you think?
I'd say right and right. I think if that Gogic one goes against us, we're spitting fire for a few days about it. And the McGregor one, like I said, it's, you know, they've made it like a black and white rule because it's a very grey thing, you know. So that's kind of one of the ones where you're getting the raw end of the deal. But like that rule just is what it is. So it'll swings and roundabouts one, isn't it? It's meant to be. But the problem is like, we sit and accept it and swallow it, but then we just wait till next week and the absolute reverse is going to happen, you know?
I know, that's the frustration. That's the frustration. It seems though we do have a different take on what happens defensively versus if, you know, it results in a goal. And that's fine. And we were trying to clarify that this morning, and Al came in and clarified it for me. But in terms of what Quinny says, I'm going to disagree on the Gogic one. I want a penalty for that, Kev, and I understand why the Callum McGregor goal was chopped off, but I want a penalty for the Gogic one. Maybe just because it's him. No, I just think, you know, his arms aren't in a natural position. They're away from his body. Yes, it's rifled at him from a very, I mean, what can he do? I get that. But as Connie says, there's going to be occasions this season where we get a penalty against us for something like that. So I'm saying penalty kick, and right to disallow the goal, as frustrating as it was.
I think he's got both of them right. By the letter of the law, I disagree with the law. I do disagree with the handball rule, especially with the McGregor one. There's no much he can. It's not as if he's went like that way. His elbow to knock the ball. It's just it's spun up and like so.
And he knows nothing about it, Kev.
He knows absolutely nothing about it. But the rules say that he gained an advantage with that. So there's no much we can do about that. But what we can actually highlight, and I will continue to highlight it, is the amount of times that Don Robertson broke up play for non-existent free kicks in that second half, which these men who referee your games, when it gets to squeaky bum time, seem great at imagining free kicks, great at breaking up play, and they do it anytime when we've got a close game. Watch the way that the referee the game changes. They do not let it flow whatsoever.
I saw it yesterday. There was an advantage that should have been played when Yang ended up down the right-hand side. Probably the best bit of space he had found himself in. We pocket space, and he was called back for a free kick as well, Kev. No, 100%, and it's not just a moan for the sake of it. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. I don't think we were rotten. Kev thinks we were rotten. I think we're going to face a lot of teams like that during the season.
I don't think we were great. I think we were stale and pointless at times, and we managed to grind it out, which is fantastic. Shows that there's a bit of resilience in the squad. Yeah. But I can't say that we were great in that second half. I just can't get on that train.
My biggest concerns are Yang and Ida at this moment in time. We'll see if that changes on Sunday at Pittodrie. We'll be here every single day leading up to that game. Thank you. Well over 2,400 on the live, which is astonishing numbers. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Get involved in everything else we do. All the links are under the video. 41 tickets left for Manny, the Stone Roses and Primal Scream legend. And there's another legend on the bill. His name's Kevin Graham, and he's going to introduce the night and the only way that Kev can do. So come along to that, and it's going to get sell out madly, chaotically, brilliantly. There you go. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to Quinny and Kev for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.